I believe I raised awareness of the issue of a lack of a primary in Guilderland. You may recall that a couple of years ago, a local judge had to resign due to a scandal. He was embezzling millions of dollars from his elderly clients, and he had to resign in disgrace. And there was an ad in the Altamont Enterprise saying the town was looking for a judge to fill in. And my father and I looked at each other and said, I should do this. And that's what I did. I made an application to the town to fill in for the vacancy created when Judge Sherwood left. And I was selected out of numerous candidates, and the town board indicated to me that they were very happy with my background and my credentials, and picked me as the most qualified person for the job. So I was happy to step up. I was newly married. Believe me, there was other things that I could have been doing. I had a teenage son. But I put my practice aside, and I jumped right in and, filled in when they needed me. I was also told if I wanted to keep the job, I would have to get the Democratic endorsement. But since the whole town board, 4 of them were Democrats, I thought that I would have their support. But it turned out the committee decided to endorse someone else. Someone that I had actually beat out. I'd gotten the job, I felt very strongly, based upon my credentials and my experience. And not to bring up all these past issues, because it's in the past. And I was told that if I wanted the endorsement, I would have to go to this caucus in July at some undetermined time that hadn't been scheduled yet, and get people to come to the caucus to vote for me. And I didn't even know what a caucus was. And I was surprised that we didn't have a primary. And I am a Democrat my whole life in Guilderland, and I was not aware of this process, I'm ashamed to say, but I decided that I was going to get involved. And the more I learned about this caucus, the more horrified I was that it was disenfranchising thousands and thousands of Democrats in the town of Guilderland. They didn't have a voice. They couldn't vote who they wanted for this important town position. So I had tried to raise awareness. I actually even brought a lawsuit to try and stop the caucus. The lawsuit was not successful, but I believe I did a lot to raise awareness. And then after the election, I joined the committee, the Democratic committee, because I wanted to continue to advocate for a primary so that everyone could vote in Guilderland. Elderly who need absentees, people with disabilities who need military people, so that people who work at night or on vacation can vote in Guilderland in a Democratic primary. So I wanted to work on that issue. And thankfully, thank you, Guilderland Democratic Committee, last year they did decide to switch to a primary. So this is the first time that I'm aware of, I think it is an historic election, that Democratic voters in Guilderland will have a primary to choose who they want to be the Democratic nominee for Guilderland Town Board. And I think it's very historic, and I'm just proud to be part of it. And it wasn't all me. Absolutely, the committee decided on, all the committee members voted in favor of it. Some didn't. It wasn't unanimous, but we now have a primary, and I think it's great for Guilderland and for the voters in Guilderland. Yeah.
So if you're elected, tell us what your goals are. Do you have specific things you'd like to accomplish?
Well, since I've been involved with Guilderland politics, why I'm running is because I think it's time for a change. I think we need a town board with new leadership who will stand up for the residents of this town. I think the residents don't have a voice, and there's too much emphasis on the developers. I'll say it right out there. I think that the voices of the residents are being drowned out by the voices of the developers in this town. And when I've been canvassing these last few weeks in Guilderland, people have very specific ideas about what Guilderland needs. They need to work on the traffic. They need to slow down the development and make sure things are looked at and there's a hard look taken at these projects. Make sure the state environmental quality review is followed. Make sure these projects fit into the neighborhoods that they're being put into, and make sure that they're not going to have negative impacts on already existing problems like traffic and infrastructure, noise, light pollution. So I want to get on the board to help fix problems for the residents. I've talked to people. Yesterday, I'm talking to a family on Willow. it's a dangerous road for their kids. They don't have any safe place to walk or ride their bikes. The father said it's not a question of, you know, if, but when there's going to be an accident, because people are speeding through as 20 gets more and more crowded. People are speeding through these little side streets, and it's dangerous. And that's not just limited to Willow. It's Lone Pine. There's so many streets that we need to work on in this town. There's a lot of people are bringing up all the dilapidated properties. There's too many, neglected properties that make our town that just reflect badly and make it look uncared for. And if we're able to solve those problems, I think that would help raise the property values of Guilderland, bring more business to Guilderland, and just make it a more beautiful place to live. We need people with vision who want to tackle these complex problems. I know it's not easy. I know it's not, you can't just wave a magic wand and make these things go away, but I want to work on these problems. I've been a lawyer for 30 years, and I'm not afraid of the challenge, and I want to get to work for people. And that's why I want to be on the town board. The things have not changed in this town for a long time, and we need to move forward as a community. And I believe there's a lot of support, for just beautifying this town and making our infrastructure safe and just basic, local government things that need to get done. So that's why I'm running.
Okay. So now I am going to read from a script so that everybody hears the same 4 issues questions.
Okay. All right.
This way voters can see where their views line up with yours.
Okay.
The first issue, and you've already touched on it, it's kind of the central issue of this election, I think, is planning. Last year, 4 Westmere residents and a gas station owner sued both the town of Guilderland and Pyramid Management Group, successfully stopping the construction of a 222-unit apartment development on Rapp Road and a proposed Costco wholesale store. Should the town have appealed Supreme Court Peter Lynch's decision or accepted the criticism in his decision, using it to recast the way the town's planning process works? And how should the town proceed from here? There's a second part to this that fits in as well, and that is the town's master plan dates from 2001. There have also been neighborhood plans done between 2003 and 2016. Is Guilderland's comprehensive plan sufficiently up to date to do the town board, planning board, and zoning board follow the master plan and neighborhood plans often enough? So that's a large question, but the centerpiece of it is about planning.
Okay. First of all, the town should not have appealed Judge Lynch's decision, 77-page decision calling out our planning board for failing to follow state environmental quality review. Failed to follow it substantively, that means following the substance of the law, and procedurally. They also didn't follow the procedures that were in place. And he declared our town planning board's decision null and void. It was a devastating black eye to our town. So no, the town should not have appealed it. They should have learned from it, and they should have gone back and learn to follow the seeker law is what they should have done. They should have. That whole situation was just terrible for the people who live on Westmere Terrace. It's a beautiful little neighborhood. They got shot down by our town. They were told they could do nothing about what Pyramid was going to do. Well, I'm very proud of Kevin McDonald, my running mate, for going up against the town and Pyramid and showing them that, yes, there is still something that people can do. The town should have been advocating for the residents. It should have been advocating for the Pine Bush, and it should have been advocating for protecting the Rapp Road historic neighborhood. That's a very unique and historical place, African American history. There's so little of it preserved, and we don't honor that. The Pine Bush, also another asset for our town that wasn't protected, and the neighborhood. The whole point of having this planning board is protect, and the seeker review is protect the neighborhood. So yes, and the master plan, I think it needs to be enforced. No, they don't enforce it. And if we enforced it, we probably wouldn't have had this whole problem with Rapp Road and Costco. too much spot zoning going on, too much variances going on. We need to follow the master plan. But yes, it's good government to update it frequently. So I think a town-wide, survey has to go out and ask people, what they want in Guilderland, what they need in Guilderland, what they want for the future. And we also have to start doing some studies on housing, what's needed in Guilderland, so that we don't have too much of the same kind of housing, and that we don't have empty units. We need to make sure that there's a need for what we're doing before we, encourage certain types of housing. We need a mixture, so that, whatever phase in your life or whatever economic background you're from, that, there's a place for you in Guilderland. Absolutely. Yes. So the master plan, that's something that the whole town should be involved in. And there's lots of ways to make sure that, so especially with technology these days, we can have we can have town meetings, we can have them online and in person, and surveys can go out. I love Bethlehem asked people to send in pictures of their favorite parts of their town. I would love to do that. Or pictures of things that they want fixed. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. So what was the third part of your question?
Yeah,
I got up to the master plan.
You got it all. So the second topic is police reform.
Okay.
To meet the governor's requirement for police reform in the wake of George Floyd's murder, a committee of 14 worked in 4 groups studying policies and training, response and diversion, criminal justice strategies, and racial justice and equity, and came up with 18 recommendations and 34 action items for the Guilderland Police Department. In your opinion, what are the best changes in the plan, and what further reforms, if any, are needed?
Well, I'm happy that they followed the governor's proposal, or excuse me, it was a law, but I think they did a good job. For police reform, I think disclosing police records is very important. When there's an issue, that has to be, the records need to be produced so people know what's going on. The body cams as well. There are the policies. They already had a lot of the policies of training and diversion, which is very important. I think my favorite thing is putting in mental health professionals to go out on these calls. When I was town judge, that was a glaring problem. People with mental illness being brought into the court system, and having a mental health professional involved is going to be a big game changer. And I think that's the best part of this problem. The police, they know they're there to protect and serve, but they're not trained professionals to deal with mental health crisis. And that's why it's such a great idea to have, social workers and mental health professionals go out on these calls and de-escalate the situation. They're the professionals, let them deal with it. It shouldn't be on the police.
Okay. The next topic is environment. The 2 landfills in Albany County will soon be filled. Guilderland has helped reduce waste by chipping up yard refuse to make usable mulch. Should the town start curbside pickup of food scraps or start a compost center? And what further measures should Guilderland take to help the environment?
Well, it goes, first of all, yes, picking up compost and food scraps waste. I think that's a great idea. And I think they are also doing that. You can get a kit from the town of Bethlehem. So why can't the town of Guilderland do that? That is a terrific suggestion. And there's big changes that need to be made structurally if we're going to stop global warming. And that is, all the gasoline car-driven vehicles. So more public transportation. I know CDTA comes up and down Route 20, but maybe that could be expanded into some of the neighborhoods. Because right now, you want to catch a bus, you got to drive to the bus station, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And the town has to look at its planning. They have to preserve green space and reuse places that are already developed and redevelop them, and not be cutting down forested areas. It's even more critical that we preserve some of these areas, not just for the beauty but also for the environment. It cools the temperature just locally. Everyone knows it's much nicer to walk in the shade. So those are big things that can be done, but certainly I'd be happy to jump in on that and work on that. Yeah, we got to preserve the green space, and that is probably the biggest change.
Okay. The fourth and final topic is revaluation. In 2019, after 12 years of not going through a town-wide revaluation, Guilderland did so. After the process was completed, Supervisor Peter Barber said, quote, "The goal was ultimately to more fairly and equitably spread the tax burden so residential property owners wouldn't be subsidizing commercial. We did that. Since then, the town board has agreed to reduce the assessments for a number of Guilderland's roughly 400 commercial properties.
Yeah.
Which property owners in town are paying their fair share, and how often should the town go through revaluation?"
Well, it was, yeah, more often than they did, because I think it was a real shock to people to get that bill jumped up so much. If they had done it more often, it would have been raised incrementally and much easier for people to handle, planning and preparing their finances. And the elephant in the room is cross gates. We went through this. I went to those town meetings, and the consultant said, we're going to go after cross gates because they are not paying their fair share. And, so that was done. But then the pandemic hits, and Crossgates is trying to reduce it by 50% what they're paying. Crossgates is not a good neighbor, honestly. I mean, I understand that we have to keep jobs in our town, but they should be part of our community. They should be working with us. They have to pay their fair share, because the rest of us are making up the difference, and that's not right. So we have to really take a look at Crossgates and see what needs to be done with regards to them. Right now, they have that confidentiality order in place, and it's not unusual in litigation. The parties agree to confidentiality, but I think in this case of Crossgates, when it's such a big issue in our community, if they're paying their fair share, we should be allowed to see, what Crossgates is charging its tenants, especially, and your paper has reported on this, that they haven't been good to the small businesses that are in the mall. They're suing them for their back rent, and that's not right either. There's been a pandemic. It should be a team effort here, and should be helping the small businesses in the mall, and not trying to throw them, sue them for every penny. So yeah, I think Crossgates, that is an issue. We need people who are independent on this town board, who do not take money from Pyramid and Crossgates Land Company, to fight back and push back a little bit, and make sure that they are chipping in their fair share to keep up the quality of life in this town, and to reduce the tax burden on the rest of us. It's it's only fair. It's only fair.
Okay, that's the end of my issues. Do you have any closing thoughts, things we haven't touched on that you think are really important for voters either to know about you or about your vision for Guilderland?
Well, I didn't prepare anything. I thought I wanted to just have a conversation, but I will say that I've been having a lot of conversations with people in this town, and I hear the same things over and over. Why are we building all of these, huge apartment complexes, when what we really need to do is work on traffic? What we really want is like a community center, or some type of, these developers should be giving back, and there should be community benefits with their development, like little playgrounds and parks. That's what they want. They want the town to look beautiful. They want the dilapidated properties cleaned up, and I want to work on these issues for the residents. I want to be a voice for them. So these are the things that we need town board members to tackle. I went out to see the rustic barn the other day and meet with Brian Caruso, who lives right next to. He wants to clean up this toxic waste site that's in his backyard, and he's raising his family there. He's got this beautiful backyard with little creeks and ducks, and a toxic waste site that people, that vagrants, sometimes he finds people living in there, and that's not safe. It is not safe for him, and he's been trying to get through to the town board to help him with this project, and there's no answers. So I want to work on things like that. I talked to a lady on Lido. She said, her house backs up to the cemetery, and there's always been this huge buffer of trees. She wakes up one morning at 7 a.m. and all the trees are coming down, and all she sees is cemetery. And she couldn't even, by the time she got town board on the hall, it's all done. The illegal tree cutting that goes on. Yeah, that's not right. So these are all problems that I want to work on. The family on Willow that hates the traffic on Willow and says the road is dangerous. These are things that I want to work on with the town. And I don't take money from the developers or from Crossgates Land Company. I've made that pledge to people because I want to be independent. My opponents, they do take money. It's contributed to the committee. Guilderland Democratic Committee takes money. I think Paul Pastor has taken money from Crossgates Land Company that's on their filings. I won't do that because I want to be independent and be able to argue with these people when necessary. So I want to work together with everyone, but I'm not going to be beholden to anyone. I will not owe anyone any favors or anything when I'm on the town board.